Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is our pleasure and privilege to welcome you back to...
Hey, it's the Luskos.
Wow, that's really good, Jenny. And of course, this is Jenny. I'm Levi Lusko. We're your hosts, and we're really pleased you're here with us.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today, for clicking the Hey, it's the Luskos clicker.
Or if you've been kidnapped, you're tied up, someone's making you listen to this, thanks for nothing.
Thank you.
If you don't have a choice. Like I'm saying, if you're listening to this against your will, thanks, kind of. I hope this makes your time in captivity just a little bit more pleasurable and pleasant.
Oh my gosh.
Honestly,
well,
it's
we'll
the
pray
least
that you get released.
It's the least we can do, but not till the episode's over, because we don't know if you'll go listen to it on your own time. Still to come, we have the real privilege today of having our friends Pastor Greg and Cathe Laurie on the podcast, on the pod. They lead Harvest Church, which has California campuses as well as a Maui campus in Hawaii, and they call it one Kumalani. I don't know what it means. And they are the power couple God has raised up behind the Harvest Crusades, which happened around the world, have happened around the world, and just some good friends of ours.
They're really great friends. I love that they talk a little bit about their story, how long they've been married. I mean, even that alone is
immeasurable,
amazing, and a long time.
You can't measure it.
It's been a long time.
Been a long time.
But they're just special to us.
They're fun.
They're so fun.
And funny.
And I think sometimes they don't realize how funny they are.
Oh, they're feisty too, with each other in a good way.
Yes.
Pastor Greg has written so many books. His newest, we talk a little bit about on the podcast today in the conversation. But before we do get into this talk with our friends, Greg and Cathe Laurie, who they also can be heard around the country and world on their radio show, New Beginning, their TV program. What are they not doing? What do they not? Greg has a cooking show on Instagram every Sunday morning where he makes eggs.
Well, the thing is that they just keep showing up, and they have kept showing up for years and years and years, and they're just examples of faithfulness.
Do you know what's not going to get run in the New York Times or USA Today tomorrow? Amazing couple preach the gospel and continue to be married to each other faithfully for decades. But you know what? They're going to run a story up the flagpole every time a pastor doesn't do that, right? Yeah. So here's a story. Pay attention, news media. Faithful pastor keeps loving his wife, keeps serving his church and writing books. Oh, you're not going to write that story. It's not clickbait enough for you. But I do want to say that this is an example of what we want, of what you and I want, a long obedience in the same direction.
That's right.
Faithfulness, consistency.
Good. That's a good news.
Eggs on Sunday. But before we do that, we did want to just draw attention to the fact that this is a significant milestone today. The 1-year anniversary of our first children's book, Roar Like a Lion.
Yeah, that's right.
Came out September 15th.
Happy birthday.
2021. 14th. Guys, turns out it's actually September 14th that the book came out. So thank you. 1 year. Praise God. Kids have read it. It's been useful for families.
Stories. A woman in our church actually came up to me and said that she gave one to her nephew, and he brought it to school, and his teacher read all the way through it with his whole class. And just imagining the simplicity of what that could have done and what it did in those students' lives and hearts, and even for that teacher too. But I love it. It's God's using it so powerfully. Yeah,
well, praise God. You know, we wanted to help families win. Parents, grandparents, kids be able to read it on their own, of course, but also for parents to feel like, hey, I could do devos with my kid. I could read this with my child. Just not too long where you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm flipping to the pages. How many more pages? Each entry takes, 5-10 minutes. You can find the hidden anchor, read the verse, learn the little fact, get ready to roar. And of course, the book's dedicated to Linya and our daughter who's in heaven. And we, by God's grace, saw our friends and family online on the day the book came out, come around it with $100,000 to pay for cornea transplants through Sight Life, our partner ministry that used Linya's corneas to help bring sight to 2 blind people.
Right.
So very special.
Beautiful.
On this 1 year anniversary, I just want to say that I'm mindful of my friend Colt Shermer, who is in heaven, whose little girl is reading this book with her mom. And anyhow, it's just, it's special and profoundly important to have resources for people going through hard things.
Yes.
So
yes.
this is dedicated this as we get to this year now of looking back, just thankful for my friend Colt. So our friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great man.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll talk more about that in the days to come, but, yeah, Roar Like a Lion. You can get it wherever books are sold. There's an Audible version. You can read it on a Kindle. And then, of course, the beautifully illustrated, award-winning book that Catherine Pearson illustrated. My co-author, Tama Fortner, and I had so much fun writing it. And we got to see it win a gold medallion.
Yeah. Dang.
A gold medallion, Jenny.
Gold medallion.
Praise God for that. Well, there you are. So Pastor Greg and Cathe Laurie, here they come. They're coming in. They're coming in hot.
Coming in hot.
They're coming in hot. Greg and Cathe Laurie, thank you for coming on Hey It's the Luskos.
Thank you.
It's a return to you.
Well,
You came on. But Cathe, you've never been on.
That's right.
He's been keeping you back from us all these years.
I love the lightsabers on the wall.
Yes. For those who are listening, you're confused, go to video on YouTube, Spotify, or Access More, and you can see the digital peacock.
He has blue lightsabers mounted on the wall. It's very cool.
Yes. But we do love you guys so much.
So
And
much.
It's so fun to get
Thank
a
you so
chat,
much.
hang out
Likewise.
together. It's we go way back, as they say.
Way back.
How back?
Well,
way back?
I mean, Pastor Greg wouldn't have known about me, but when I was a little kid, as the story goes, my dad, Chip Lusko, would write sermons for his church plant and a Bible study he started, and he would always be studying. He had a little den in Colorado, and I would go in and sit there, and he would give me his green concordance, and I would look up verses. So like anger, it would show you all the verses. That was all a computer, but then it was all the verses on anger, and I would look up the verses for him and help him study. And he would put on teaching tapes sometimes to listen to, like, get ideas. And he would listen to Calvary Chapel Riverside sermons that he would buy the tapes in the mail.
Back in the day.
And I remember one time I'm in the room and this amazing Bible study was being given about David. Yeah. And I learned about him in Sunday school and I loved it. And so at bedtime, as a little kid, I was probably, 9 years old, 8 years old. And I said, could I listen to that teaching again at bed? Maybe I was even 5.
My
maybe I was younger.
goodness.
Wow.
Anyhow, my dad's like, yeah. So for the next 3 or 4 years, I wouldn't go to bed without listening to that teaching tape, which was your voice. So I've been
putting you to sleep for years.
Exactly. But the best part, of course, of the story is that later on, I still have that tape in my study, and I played it for you when you came to preach me for the first time.
I remember.
Yeah, I picked him up at the airport. I don't know if you know this, Cathe.
Oh my goodness.
And I brought that tape cassette. It's called David,
I can't believe you
His
still
Calling,
have that.
Part 2. That's the teaching. David, His Calling, Part 2. So
Very imaginative title.
very good title. Part 2.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened in Part 1. But the worst part is, so I picked him up from the
context.
airport. I was very, starstruck, of course, in a good way. And I go, Pastor Craig, ever since I was a little kid, I listened to your teachings, and this is actually the teaching. And I put it in the cassette tape player in my Chevy Blazer, 1998 Chevy Blazer.
Wow.
That it was always breaking down. Church planner struggles, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And the moment your voice came on, you were like giving a very steamy portrayal of David and Bathsheba.
Yes.
And you turned to me and you went, how young were you when you listened to this? And I was like, I don't know, 5 or 6. And you went, no wonder you're so screwed up. And you're right.
I remember that, yes.
Oh, man.
That's so great. So that was your, that's way back for you.
Well,
Right.
then there's that photograph of you as a little kid standing behind the Harvest Crusade pulpit in New Mexico. I think it was an outdoor.
You did a University of New Mexico Lobo Stadium crusade in 1992.
That was right after we started.
So I was 10.
10.
Yeah.
And I was at sound check.
And I was 60, sadly, so
And
I was old even then.
that's not true.
No, I was in my 30s.
In 1992, how old were you?
Let's see. Well,
You're born in,
Crusade
what year were you born?
started in
55?
1952.
52.
Oh, so in 92, you were 40.
Yeah.
Okay,
Your
so yeah,
age.
so our exact age. So I got up at sound check, and I remember, getting up on the pulpit, and my dad snapped a picture. And I just always respected you guys and loved you. And I remember one time you came to speak on a Wednesday night at the church that I was a student pastor at,
Yeah.
Calvary Albuquerque. and you were getting a tour, and that's the first time I met you. But I mean, I used to listen to your sermons. I would, give sermons at outreaches and stuff, and I would literally sit there and listen to your crusade messages and dissect how you approach like the gospel and how you would connect.
Levi.
And I wouldn't rip off your sermons, but I would definitely get inspiration from them.
I've always been a student. That's
Yes.
amazing.
Well, I would memorize parts of what you would say. I remember you would do the thing about doubting Thomas and how Jesus said, the way I go, and how I get there, know. And then Thomas raised his hands. We don't know where you're going, and we don't know the way. And your cadence on that.
Still do that.
Yeah, I still. I mean, these little things I've stolen for sure from you over the
Funny,
years.
you relate to that, Greg.
Well, it's like, Jesus would make these profound statements. And you wonder, did the guys even get it half the time? They certainly didn't understand he was going to be crucified. He was so clear. I'm going to be betrayed. I'll be crucified. I'll rise again in 3 days later. And they're like, hey, he's speaking metaphorically. So he says, where I go in the way, Thomas says, we don't know where you're going. We don't know the way. But then Jesus said, John 14:6, which is?
I am the way, the truth, and life. No one goes to the Father except through me.
So I'm glad Thomas asked that question.
Yeah, 100%. But you're so funny, and I always loved how you humanized and normalized. You took these guys out of stained glass, and you made them more relatable and funny. And
Well, you do. You imagine the disciples looking at Jesus like
they were all nodding, like, yes, we do know the way.
But in the background, there's just birds.
Thomas calls them all on it.
I just love in the Gospels where it says that Jesus was so exasperated with his disciples at one time. He says, how much longer am I going to have to do this and tell you these things? You should know this. It's so funny and so
Totally.
real, but
I know.
we can identify with them.
So then as the story continues, as the development moves on, because I'm sure you don't remember either of those moments, but I did. And I was in California then, pastoring at Ocean Hills Church, and was thinking about maybe going out to do my own thing, maybe staying there and trying to figure it out. And someone said, well, you should call, it's Pastor Greg Laurie. And I was like, well, that'd be nice if he took my call, but there's no way he's going to do that. And then someone said, well, I could get you in touch with him. And so I remember I sent you an email, and you were kind enough to meet me for lunch, encourage me.
Wow, for lunch too.
We met at the
Not
Mission
coffee,
down in San Juan Capistrano.
Oh, okay.
Or like Cedar Grill or something like that.
Yeah, sure.
And we spent like 2 hours together that day. And then you were so generous with your time, and we started up a
Well, I saw that gifting on you really early. I remember the Ocean Hills Church, they were looking for a pastor. They were looking at a lot of older guys. And someone sent me a link to one of your messages. I watched her for 5 minutes, and I called one of my friends who was involved in choosing the pastor. I said, you should pick this guy right here. I didn't know you that well at all. I said, pick him. Because I can tell very quickly if someone has the gifting, and it's just there or it isn't there. And you had that gifting even when you were young and you had your little kind of blondish hair and,
your little blondish hair.
Well, you had this sort of surfer look. You kind of this surfer look, But that gift is there. God gives you the gift, and now you've developed that gift. And as you were saying to me earlier, Greg, I'm the greatest preacher in America today. And I said, Levi, it's best if someone else says that. You're a really good preacher, Levi. But maybe someone else says it, because Jennie even had the verse, let another man praise you.
I think I said the most tormented preacher in America.
That's
was the
what it
exact
was.
quote. You misheard me.
I become hard of hearing in my older age, so that's what you said. I misunderstood.
Well, all that to say, for me, it goes way back, but respect for you both. And Jennie and I, in marriage and in ministry, have been just so grateful for your example, and that we get to hang out today a little bit.
Yeah.
To God be the glory. It's his grace that holds us, right? I mean, we think 50 years back, it's just amazing, because we've been through so many phases in our ministry and in our marriage, and God has held us every step of the way. I think when two people, very different people, Greg and I are complete opposites, as you guys probably know, in our personalities and our approaches to things, but, he brings these two people together to complement each other, and sometimes those edges can get a little sharp at times, but we're better together. We help each other. I don't know what I would do without him telling me the absolute truth that no one else will tell me, honestly, and helping me see things about myself that I'm blind to. Marriage it takes work, but I would not be anywhere near the person that I am today. Anything good, Greg's had such a hand in encouraging and cultivating that, things he saw in me that I couldn't see in myself, that have been such a blessing. So
and when I have something I'm dealing with, good news, bad news, whatever, the first person I need to talk to is Cathe. What do you think? We jokingly say we have one complete brain between the two of us because, we'll forget something. There's a guy, he had a son, and he was a very unusual name for the son. And Cathe said, what was his son's name? I said, I think his name is Sock. She goes, no, his name is Seven. I said, that's it, but by saying Sock,
it triggered my memory. How that connected out.
Which are both unusual names,
Let's
right?
talk about Sock as a child's name. How bad would life be for you if your parents named you
Seven's a lot better.
Sock? I mean, Seven is at least like thoroughly biblical. They didn't even wear socks in the Bible, Sock. Birkenstock is your
that's
little
how the
brother.
brain works.
God.
That is hilarious.
Okay,
well, you
so-
guys had just hit 50 years married?
It's coming.
Coming. Will be
So it's 50 years.
2024.
50 years married and then 50 years of
Ministry.
ministry.
What an
Same church,
incredible
too.
Same church.
I have nowhere else to go now.
No.
It probably feels like you pastored 20 different churches in that time.
It does, because we have changed. I mean, your church has changed. We all change, and we need to change.
Yeah.
And we should never be afraid to change. And, I've always been an early adopter of things. Like, I love technology. So I'm always the guy that will order the gadget, but I always check out the return policy first.
Yeah.
And I've returned a lot of things, but I want to play with that. That interests me. Oh, I love this design. This music is different. So I'm not afraid of cultural changes. But I think that as we do ministry, we keep our core values. Like, this is what doesn't change. I think the problem is sometimes, we're flexible where we should be inflexible, and we're inflexible where we should be flexible. Yeah. So we should be inflexible with, I'm here to teach the word of God. I'm here to proclaim the gospel. That I am inflexible. This is what I always will do. Now, flexible, I can be flexible on musical style, on format, on how long I give a message, on the use and embracing of technology and all these things. So I think, you just adapt, and you do that really well. I mean, I feel like I've pastored, maybe 10 different churches, if not more.
Wow.
The music of Harvest today is way different than it was even 10 years ago, and way different from 10 years before that. We started when it was very organic, Jesus movement, kind of folk music. That was our music. But we're not living
Well, you guys
in that
were a
era.
part of pioneering that sound too, really.
Right.
Well, I had no role in it, but I was there to see it happen.
Yeah.
I had a
And
front
you
row
used
seat.
it. Our services always included sort of the early bands, the early Jesus People bands that were out there. It was
Maranatha
part of the
music,
regular
all that.
service.
Yeah.
Well, Pastor Chuck, who was he's called the father of the Jesus movement. Sort of the explosion of that spiritual awakening happened at Calvary Chapel in Costa Mesa. Chuck was a pretty traditional guy who hooked up with this hippie preacher named Lonnie Frisbee. And so the two of them together were really powerful. It was like nitroglycerin, and it blew up. So Chuck needed Lonnie, Lonnie needed Chuck. So we kind of came for Lonnie, we stayed for Chuck. But the interesting thing is, Chuck taught us the Word of God, and Chuck kind of stabilized us.
And Lonnie was like an evangelist.
Yeah, he was an
And an
evangelist.
innovator, the way he preached and the way he talked.
His communication style.
Using humor. He was very, very understandable. It was great for us.
He was the first model of what I do in a way, but what many others do. But on Sunday morning, Chuck had hymns. That's where I learned all the hymns. And we did contemporary Christian music. It was called Jesus music back then, sort of the midweek studies. And so when we started our church a couple of years later, I decided that our worship would be the contemporary music. We still do a hymn here and there, but that was a paradigm shift. When we started,
did you get flack for it when you went to
because
that?
everything was so new.
Oh my goodness, Levi! The congregation, there was maybe one married couple.
Yeah.
When
So
we
it was a
started
big youth- it was
Harvest
a
in
big youth
Riverside,
group.
We were all young.
it was like there was one couple, and there was one child. Our nursery care is like, okay, well, you have the kid. Why don't you do it?
The kid.
Yeah, he said, we need to have a ministry for the children. I said, well, you're the only one with a kid. You do it. What do I know about
Like, what do you have for my children? Well, I don't know. What are you doing later? Yeah.
Exactly. But that, nowadays we hear the phrase startup church a lot. Back then, I'd never heard of it before.
Church planning wasn't the same as it is
Wasn't.
today.
They
Yeah.
were just kind of churches that had been around for a really long time, that they would eventually get a new pastor. So to go into an area and actually start a church from scratch, I mean, I'm not saying I'm the first one to do it, because the whole early church was church planning effectively, but this was not a norm at that time, and we were breaking new ground.
Or at least there wasn't verbiage for it, really, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
And you guys were born and raised in California.
Yeah,
Like,
we
you
got
were
some of
from
the great stuff. We got to
California.
get some of this on you.
I was born in California, but until I was in high school, I lived in Southeast Asia.
Oh.
Yeah, so
Where
I
in
came back
California were you born?
We were, it's so funny, we were both born in Long Beach. And then after I was born, I traveled overseas and lived overseas till high school. He traveled to the East Coast, to Hawaii, and then he eventually settled back into Orange County. But the funny thing is, I don't know how many years later, I think I was 14. So 14 years later after I was
What took
born.
you guys to Asia?
My dad's job.
Okay.
Yeah. And so.
You worked for an oil company.
What's funny is that we were both born in Long Beach, and we met in Long Beach at a Bible study, at a coffee house.
Yeah.
Where Greg and
So you were both already saved at that point?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And now this whole that you're talking about, the Jesus movement, you guys being young, all these things, it's all about to be something that's on the movie screen, right?
Yeah. So we just got done filming it in Alabama and California. And Alabama, because it's a lot more affordable to film there. And it kind of was standing in for California. We were in a place called Fairhope, Alabama, beautiful little place. But, great, incredible cast. Kelsey
I think we have
Grammer.
on the screen, those who are watching the video can see the actor playing Cathe, which is
Anna Grace
Barlow.
Barlow.
Anna Grace Barlow. And then who's the actor who plays you?
Joel Courtney. He was in Super 8, also in The Kissing Booth recently on Netflix. Kelsey Grammer plays Pastor Chuck.
And then Jesus plays Lonnie.
Yeah, Jonathan Rumi, who plays the role of Jesus on The Chosen.
Jesus.
I mean,
Yeah, a lot of people think Jonathan Rumi is.
you were telling me that people come up to him in restaurants and kneel down at his feet and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I've gotten to know him pretty well. He's a really great guy, and he loves the Lord. And so I invited him over for dinner, and my grandkids were there, and they watched The Chosen and love it. So he comes
As we all do, yeah.
Yeah, and they're just like in awe of like it's Jesus having. So we served him fish. We thought that was appropriate.
Thoroughly biblical.
But it's so funny, Cathe. Tell him what happened when Jonathan drove up in his car.
Oh my gosh, it was so weird. I was standing in the kitchen getting things ready, and I look out the front window, and there's a car driving by really slowly and looking directly at our house in through the dining room window. He looked so much like the paintings of Jesus. It was I was just unsettled.
Like,
I was
Jesus is at the door.
oh my goodness. It looked like one of those Renaissance paintings come to life. I just cracked up.
What was he wearing, though?
Just normal clothes.
He was wearing normal
that would
clothes,
be what would take you to suspend reality a little bit.
But the hair
Yeah.
and the face
beard.
and the beard, and he's just like looking. But he had that look like you're looking for something. You know, like he didn't know where he was, but the look on his face, that kind of piercing, kind of peering through the window at me. It was just bizarre.
Now, how much like his
Came under
character?
conviction and started repenting.
I fell on my face, and what must I do to be
It's Jonathan, not Jesus. Relax.
Yeah.
Had you seen The Chosen before that moment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. we
How
had
much
seen
like his character in the show is he in real life?
No, I would say, I wouldn't say not at all. Because it's an accent. And I said, how did you, he's from the East Coast. He can do a great New York accent, but he can mimic all these accents. He's really amazing.
Is he classically trained as an actor?
I don't know if he's classically trained, but he's a method actor. Like when he takes on a character, he kind of becomes that person for the time he's playing the role. Kind of an interesting thing as the movie
So when people do kneel down before him, he's like, yes, I bless you, Chad.
No, he was in a restaurant.
He
told me he's
dismiss
in
that.
a restaurant, and some lady sees him and recognizes him and gets on her knees in front of him. And she says, I know you're not Jesus, but I watch The Chosen, and I have a child in the hospital.
Oh, my goodness.
And I said, Lord, give me a sign, speak to me. And I saw you, and I just want to say thank you. And so he was cool. He just like let her, she was having this moment.
Sure.
He had, he knows that it's not him. He knows he represents Jesus, and he takes that very seriously. And I've seen him interact with people. He handles it beautifully and is a really down-to-earth, fun, humble guy. But I said, how did you get that accent? He combined two accents together to get that Jesus accent, or that intonation that he uses. But when you talk to him, he doesn't talk that way. And I kid him. He's
You
really...
hit him?
Oh, you kid him.
Kid him.
In the movie, he
What
plays.
did you think I said?
Hit. I hit him. You made a motion like this.
Yeah.
I hit him.
I hit Jesus.
So, but in the movie, he plays the preacher who was preaching the day you gave your life to Jesus.
Yeah, Lonnie.
And
Yeah.
the day I
Oh,
You
I was
go.
going to tell you a quick story. So the filming is wrapping at the beach, and I'm standing there with Jonathan. I was helping him with certain things he was doing. And he goes, I'm going to really miss playing Lonnie, because he immersed himself in the character. Yeah. He had effectively become Lonnie. Then a few minutes later, I saw Kelsey Grammer, who was playing Chuck. I said, well, Kelsey, I just talked to Jonathan, and he said he's really going to miss playing this character. And he really almost felt like he became that person. Is that how you felt playing Chuck? No. I just do my job and I'm done.
Yeah.
So not a method actor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But both so good on the
different
screen.
styles.
People are going to be blown away by this
So the
film.
movie's called?
Jesus
It's called Jesus Revolution.
And when does it hit theaters?
Next Easter of 2024.
2024.
No, wait, 23.
next year.
23.
23.
Okay, Easter of 23.
Yes.
Jesus Revolution. Do you know how many screens it's going to be on?
Well, it's Lionsgate that's behind it. They've spent a lot of money making this film. They'll spend a lot of money on promotion. So Lionsgate treats the films that are done by the Kingdom Story Company, which is John Irwin's company.
People would have seen what movies they've done.
I Can Only Imagine. I Still Believe, Woodlawn, the great filmmakers.
They do Fireproof?
No.
No, they didn't.
That's another studio.
There was another one that was recently done about the football guy.
American Underdog.
American Underdog.
Kurt Warner.
Oh, yeah.
That's amazing.
Great movie.
Yeah, so they really make great films. And so Lionsgate will release it because Lionsgate does John Wick and other films. They'll release it like any other Lionsgate release. It should be in theaters around the country, and I don't know how many screens.
Where can people find information about it?
Well, just if they stay
Jesus
tuned into
Revolution film, Google it, probably.
Yeah, I would say main best place is harvest.org because I give updates on it.
Gotcha.
So follow me on social media on Instagram or Twitter. And if there's anything to know, I'll talk about
Well,
it.
I'm excited to see it. And you said you have
Same.
some clips to show me later,
Yes,
so I'm
I
excited
do.
to see that.
Yes.
Cathe, I didn't know. So tell me about, so I obviously know Pastor Greg on his high school campus heard Lonnie preach. What happened when you gave your life to Jesus?
Okay, so we were raised in Southeast Asia. I have two older sisters. At that time, the whole hippie revolution thing was happening. And I was very intrigued by it. My two older sisters embraced all of that tune in, turn on, drop out, don't trust anyone over 30. And
Get a haircut, all that
went,
stuff. Yeah.
in my parents' mind, off the deep end. And I thought it was absolutely fascinating. And we've been listening to the Beatles and Jimi Hendrix and Led Zeppelin and all of that. And we were just fascinated by sort of this new approach to living. And so we started using drugs and, the whole mindset behind that. And we're just following what the culture was dictating. So my dad changed careers at 40 and moved back to California. And when we came back to California, the hippie thing was really in full sway. And we, within 6 months after moving back to California, my mother had been praying. She couldn't talk us out of it. She couldn't figure out what was going on. And she just stopped talking to us about what we were doing that was wrong and started praying for us. Wow. And within 6 months, the Jesus Revolution was on fire, and I heard the gospel, and it changed my life. At 14, I was 14 years old.
14 years old, where were you at?
14 years old. I was on a college campus. My sister was going to the college. She had heard there was she heard there was a rock concert in the student lounge. And we were like, well, yeah, free music, let's go. So we're sitting on the front lawn of the college campus, and we're getting high, passing around a joint among myself and my sisters and her friends. And these guys come walking up, and they don't sit down. And that's pretty typical to just have someone join your group and share what you have. But they didn't. They just stood there, and they said, we used to do what you're doing, but we don't do that anymore, because we invited them. Said, do you want to sit down?
Just puff, puff, pass.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, yeah? Well, why? Why don't you do it anymore? We found what we were really looking for. And I think the difference between culture then and culture now, drug use was really not just, yes, it was recreational, but I think there was a spiritual component to it. We were really searching for spiritual things. At least I was, being raised in a Catholic home, but seeing just sort of the formulas and the prayers and I didn't relate to it, and I left my faith. I didn't really have a faith, but I just didn't believe it. And but I wanted to believe in something, and never feeling like I was special to God, never feeling like I would ever achieve what saint status was to have God speak to you personally. But I started searching in Eastern religion and through taking LSD and smoking pot. And so when they said they found what they were looking for, I said, oh yeah? Well, what was that? And they said, a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. And I was like, are you kidding me? Jesus Christ? You have a relationship with Jesus Christ. And in my mind, I thought maybe someone somewhere in history back in those days, maybe a saint here or there, really have a relationship with God through Jesus, but it's not available to everybody. And I dismissed it. And so I thought, what in the world? And then they just told us, I said, well, okay, well, how did you come into this relationship with God? And they told us it was as simple as prayer, turning to God in prayer. And I was, taken aback by that. I mean, I was really taken aback by it because, first of all, I was already getting kind of fed up with the whole scene of, going to love-ins, going to rock concerts, seeing the effects of it in my life, my sister's lives. My oldest sister overdosed once, the fracture in my family between our parents. There's a lot of, just a lot of upheaval that I didn't like that was happening. So when they said that, at first I was dismissive, and I actually, being high, I started to laugh uncontrollably at what they were saying. And I covered my face as I was just laughing. And then into this laughter, and I kid you not, this is as clear to me today as it has ever been, this voice, this awareness said to me, you are laughing at what is holy and true, and you are on your way to hell.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
And I am telling you, I came so sober and clear-headed, and I looked up from this convulsive laughter and looked at them, and I said, what do I need to do?
Oh my gosh.
That's what I said. I was 14.
Wow.
And
Who are you, Lord?
that's how I turned around. Exactly. And I kid you not, Levi and Jennie, the next morning after I had prayed with them, we went into the concert. Turned out it was a Christian concert. These guys were an acid rock band. I mean, hardcore electric guitars, drums. And I could hardly hear their lyrics. I couldn't understand their lyrics. But some guy got up there with a Bible afterwards and kind of did a message and said, if you want to know Jesus, stand up. And there are like 50 people in this student lounge on a college campus. And they said, if you want to know Jesus, stand to your feet right now. And I'm like, well, what I heard out there, I want to know Jesus. I was like the only one who stood up in the entire room. And
a 14-year-old on a college campus.
14. I was just going to say, that's a lot. You'd already lived at that point.
Yeah, I was burning out on all that, the hippie stuff that I felt was false promises to find peace, love, and joy. And I didn't have any peace, love, and joy. I didn't find God. I was still searching. He wasn't real to me. But the next day when I got up to go to school, this is how the gospel and Christ can change your life. I mean, I was a typical hippie, dressed the way I dressed, talked the way I talked, had an attitude towards adults and authority in my life. Got up the next morning and I had this sense that God cared what I put on that morning, what I was going to wear to school. I found myself praying like, God, well, Jesus, what do you want me to wear to school today? I'm your disciple. Now what am I going to do? I thought I was one of maybe 12 people. I didn't know there was a whole Jesus thing going on. I thought it was like, oh, just us and these people in the band and those guys on the campus. And then they invited us to Calvary Chapel in Costa Mesa. And that's when I heard Lonnie preach. And he gave an invitation. And I went forward again.
Yeah. You're like, I'm doing this every week.
I'm like,
felt great the first time, feel even better the
stand
second
up and go
time.
forward. Guess who was doing the follow-up in the room? Pastor Chuck Smith.
Oh, wow.
He was sitting on the floor cross-legged with all of us high schoolers. That place was
It's hard to
packed with
imagine.
high school kids.
Crisscross applesauce.
Yeah.
You still sit that way.
I can.
I can't. My legs are too tight.
Really?
It's my IT band, truly.
He does sit that.
He
It's
does.
crazy.
I've noticed
He's very
that.
flexible.
Yep.
So then how did you guys meet after that then? So that was after.
We haven't met yet.
Been married almost 50 years.
We're still getting acquainted.
Yeah. So I was there was a little church that was starting in Long Beach, and I was helping out, and they had a little thing going in a coffee house. It's so funny, coffee houses. None of them had good coffee. We just called them coffee houses, but whatever.
There's a
So I
place
was
to gather.
speaking, I was sitting on a stool, and I'm up there giving a little Bible study, and I see Cathe and 2 other girls. I didn't know their names yet, 3 of them. And I looked at all 3 of them, and Cathe caught my eye. It's not like I'm scoping girls when I preach, but I noticed her. And there was
but
a
you
light.
You were just 18 years old.
So you're like some
you
old pervy preacher. You know, you're 18.
Oh my God.
True. But there was a light shining on Cathe. And then I realized it was her
Really?
sister holding a flashlight over her head. No. So I walked up
I was
to him.
glowing.
I walked up to him and said, "Hey, how you guys doing?" "Oh, okay." "Hey, you want to go out and get a cup of coffee after church?" Sure. So we went out and we had dessert. But I was interested in Cathe. Then it was Monday night. I did it again. "Let's go out and have dessert." And the third time I said to Cathe, "Hey, you want to go out and get some dessert?" And she said, "Yeah, let me get my sisters." And I said, "No, I don't really want the sisters.
They don't have to come.
Why don't just you and I go?" So that was my
And then
way.
I knew, oh shoot, he's
So
like kind of serious.
did you
here.
like him?
Yes, I thought he was adorable. I mean, I'm using that word now. I don't know what I would have described it as then, but I thought he was really
I
cool.
was much thinner, Levi.
He had
and I
long
had
blonde hair
How
and
old were you?
a beard, and I thought that
A
was
red beard.
I mean, I love
How old
that
were you
look.
then, Cathe?
I was a hippie. I love that look.
How old were you?
I was 14. 14,
then?
15, yeah, 14 or 15.
Oh, so
maybe
you were
just
18.
turning 15.
Okay.
No, I would have been 17. I'm 3 years
There's
older.
3 years. Yeah.
No, I became a Christian at 17. Maybe you were 15.
So there was a
Do we
little age
really
gap.
even know this story?
Yeah, it's fine. Look, the
We were
chronology
so
is
young.
not important.
Yeah.
The point is
50
you're
years
young,
is a long
and you
time.
had a while to wait then,
Yeah.
obviously, before you guys could, start dating and all that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
But we did, what we considered dating in those days was going out after church to a restaurant.
Yeah.
That was
I don't
dating.
think I ever did a proper date
No, I mean,
or a proper proposal.
Yeah, that's a good story.
When
Tell
it
us about
finally came
that.
to the day to ask her, I said to her, "Well, I guess we're getting married, huh?" And that was the first time she had heard me say that. And I didn't have a ring or anything. And so I thought, well, what a romantic. I guess we're getting married, huh?
And then
But
what did you say?
then again, we've been married 50
50 years,
Maybe there's
yeah.
something to it.
True.
Because other people skywriting proposals.
Yeah.
I
One
know.
guy I know did
what's the deal?
Overdoing it.
wrote it in
Today,
underwater
it's
tablet.
like, you got to spend bucks just to say, will
Yeah.
you marry me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, but then you see like the girls already like they're dressed in white, their nails are already perfectly
know
done.
it's coming,
like
yeah.
they must know that it's coming.
And
like
they're
it's not
filming it.
surprise.
There's 3
And
cameramen,
There's
yeah.
cameras
Yes.
in the background.
A great
the
white
family
shark
comes
ready
out
to-
around from the bushes
Yeah.
and they're like, wow, this is like so much planning.
That is.
Well, people
It's
spend
different.
more time thinking about the wedding than the marriage, and more time planning their house than their home. And we had a hippie wedding. It cost $8. But
$8. Where did you spend
If
that on?
that.
What was the $8 spent on?
a single flower.
We had a macrame
one
plant
flower.
hanger.
Okay.
We got 3
With the-
toasters afterwards, but it's okay. though.
Toasters?
But it was.
That was
as
the big
gifts.
gift. Yeah.
No, I'm just saying people spend so much
registry
on
then.
weddings today,
Yeah.
and it's like we spent very little. But we wanted to.
Did you guys do premarital counseling?
I don't recall. Well,
We
in
had
a way,
a,
I
we
did.
had a friend, Tom
Ken,
and Mary Ellen.
and Ken too. Who I talked to. Yeah,
Gullickson? Is that Gullickson?
Yeah, we did a form of It wasn't official, but I talked to people who are married that counseled me.
Yeah.
So in its way, it was premarital.
Was it a
counseling.
tough learning curve when you guys
Okay,
got married?
so our dating, our courtship was volatile. It was like
Tumultuous.
man. So we were really young, and even we're very, very different, but we are very, very strong.
You're
in
It'll
our
all be in the
opinion.
movie, Levi.
And we fought
we
a
actually
lot.
show this in the movie. We show the conflict.
Was it weird watching these people be
Very.
you and sitting there going, oh, dang.
It was so weird and so funny, and a little bit eerie too, because you're hearing this actress say stuff to Greg, and Greg say stuff calling her Cathe, and you're watching
Wow.
this happen before you. But
Does actor Greg call you Monk?
no,
Which on
that doesn't come out.
last time Greg was in the podcast, he told us all the nicknames Monk and Weasel. No, not Weasel.
No, Weasel.
Sorry,
That's
what's the other
another
one?
guy.
Wow.
They're all animals.
my nickname.
Sorry.
You're not
that's a
explaining
different
that
friend.
joke.
You call a different friend Weasel, but you do call her
Tell
Monk.
everyone your
Okay.
nickname as a kid.
Which one?
Well, you were called this as a kid.
Microchip. Levi made your buddy guy.
No, there's another
oh,
one.
Rat Boy.
That's it.
yeah, thank you. That's not a
If I were
nickname.
you-
That was a slur.
If I
Okay.
were you, I'd put that on a shirt.
Just
and
embrace
own
it.
Own it.
Well,
I
Greg
should.
loves Rat Fink,
Oh,
so
yeah.
Rat
Yeah.
Guy
the
is kind of a
surfer
cool thing.
brand guy. Who's the guy who draws that?
Well, it was Big Daddy Broth, but Rat Fink was kind of a response to Mickey Mouse. It was all clean and happy, and so he did this rat with flies around him and
all melting and stuff.
Sharp teeth.
But I was a
Put a
cartoonist.
picture of Rat Fink on the screen in the video, unless we'll get sued. Let's
Rat
look into
Fink.
that.
Okay, so but you were talking about how your courtship was like
tumultuous.
volatile and
Yeah.
tumultuous, and I
think
think
we
you were
got-
going into a.
Rat Fink coming up here. Let's see. Oh, yeah, there he is.
There he is.
So to those who haven't seen him, now you can be disturbed.
I know.
Wow.
I met an artist who's an official Rat Fink artist for the Ed Roth estate. He's a Christian named Thomas Estrada. So he's drawn some for me, and I have them up my office. And people walk into a pastor's office, and they're like, "Why is that
Why is
on
that
your
there?"
wall?"
You had it in the children's area,
Yeah.
and they taped over it because they don't have the backstory. Of
It's
what
a little
this is all.
disturbing. His
It
eyes
is.
are
I
all
mean, can you
bugged
imagine you're
out.
checking your kids into?
But I was a cartoonist.
But that's
growing
like all
up.
the bottom of a skateboard art,
Yeah.
like all that era.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Tumultuous.
Yeah. I don't know. We fought about everything. You said it was black. I'd say it was white. It was just for this.
Was it after an initial honeymoon
okay,
period,
you know
or
what
did it
I-
start immediately?
Immediately. And I think what it was, and I didn't have a long dating history. I was like 15 years old when we really started dating. And I felt like the little experience I had with guys was you see them, they're cute, you get to know them. And as soon as they start liking you, they become almost like these doormats. They don't have an opinion. They're afraid to choose or to say or to lead in any direction that you don't already want to go. They want to know which way you're going and go the same way. And that
In
to
her
me,
vast experience as a 14-year-old.
I was a deep thinker at
Yeah.
14.
Clearly.
Yeah.
And so when a guy would start, I would sense that. It's like, what are we going to do? Well, he would say, well, I don't know. What do you want to do? And that was the biggest turnoff ever. I was like, you don't have an idea what you want to do? I'm not even interested.
Yeah.
I already know I'm messed up. At least let me hear what your thing is. At least you'll be interesting to me. Don't say you want to do what I want to do. So when I met Greg, he was so clear in the direction in which he was going with his life. And he knew how to get there. He knew the steps he wanted to take. He wanted to serve the Lord. And there was no compromise there with him. And for me to meet a guy who was so clear in his mind what he wanted and what his standards were, I found absolutely fascinating. At the same time, there's this side of me is like, I want my own way and I'm going to rule at any.
Yeah.
And so even though I respected that, I would do everything I could to contradict or to sway him or to change his mind. If he had an opinion about something, I wanted to exert my opinion. And I don't know, Greg, if you realize this, but every time we would debate something, I would debate for the sake of debating, just to be contrary. He always had like an ethic. He always landed on the right thing, and I saw
Let's
that.
remember that for the
time and
future.
time again. I know he's going to use that.
Get
on
that
me
in
now.
writing.
I need that transcribed quickly. We're putting it on a T-shirt.
We're bringing a notary by right now.
Notary, yes.
So
I don't know. We would just break. It would just get too much. There was too much conflict, and I didn't know how.
did you have different
to
fighting
be.
styles? How you responded to that conflict?
I don't know.
Well,
Probably.
Like someone explodes, someone bottles it
Well,
up.
I always try to de-escalate. I don't like it when the voices get raised or it becomes, the next level. Let's just talk about this. I'll listen, then I'll, speak. And so, I try to keep it civil, never became physical or anything like that.
Sure.
But, you just, try to resolve it because you got to hear what the person is saying. And even, because your emotional brain kicks in and you don't listen carefully.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're talking about something, but it's not even what the something is, it's something else. And you try to understand what they're dealing with
He's
and what
talking
they're
about
trying
this
to.
morning.
Yeah, okay. So excellent.
No, come on, that's great. No,
No, it's marriage is this is the reality of marriage, young people.
Yeah.
Is that, maybe there are certain couples that absolutely see everything eye to eye and never have a disagreement or never have any kind of thing where they have to learn to compromise. They have to learn to say, I'm sorry, it was my fault, I messed up. But recognizing my my own personality, I tend to hyper focus on something, and I get very tenacious, and it's like almost like I don't want to let go until this is resolved, until I win the argument, until I persuade you. Whereas Greg will often, he just wants to stop. He just says, I'm going to just walk away, just back away from this. And I will stew for a little bit, and he knows that about me. They often say, don't go to bed without resolving your argument. I don't know that that's the best time to be arguing, is late at night when you're not thinking. Go to bed, have a meal, wake up the
tell
next
each other
morning.
we'll pick this up tomorrow.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
You love each other. We'll talk about it.
Exactly.
Because you're not always in your right mind.
Not always in your right mind.
Yeah.
And
things look worse and seem worse at night.
Yeah.
I get on a track, and it's really hard for me to get off that track.
Same.
And sometimes I need to say, I need to go for a walk, and then you sort of see things in a different light. When the adrenaline kind of comes down,
like you said,
you just see
you come out
things
of the
more
limbic
clearly.
brain a little bit, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Did you ever fear when you were in those early years, before you had developed some of those gears, that you weren't going to make it?
In
Was there
marriage?
times?
I never did.
Once we were married, no, we.
The bigger fights were courtship?
This was courtship. Yeah.
But after, never. It's like, because I came from a divorced home, my mom was married and divorced 7 times. I was determined that when I got married, it was going to be for life. And it's not like I just have this commitment to marriage. No, I love Cathe, and whatever it is, we'll get through it. We'll figure it out. Look, we went through the worst trauma that any couple will ever go through when our son died.
Yeah.
And you guys know this because your daughter is gone to be with the Lord, Lenya, and we have that in common. But, I've seen couples break up, like marriages fall apart because they don't know how to grapple with it. And it made our marriage even stronger. I think it's just a determination that, we're not going to, that's never on the table. And even in the worst moment, never, divorce, no, that word is stricken from the vocabulary. It's not an option. And I think people go into marriage today, and it's sort of a negotiating tool, perhaps, or something they're actually contemplating. I think if that's the way you feel, you might be best staying single. Wedlock should be a padlock, and it should be a lifetime commitment. And you can, I've counseled a lot of people over the years, as you have, Levi. And of the people I know who divorced, I would say in almost every instance, I can think of people I knew, they could have got through their conflicts, and their marriage could have stayed together.
Yeah.
There's a few exceptions, I will acknowledge, but very few. Most of them, people say, we have irreconcilable differences. And I jokingly say, I've had irreconcilable differences with Cathe for almost 50 years.
Yeah,
She's neat, I'm messy. She's cute, I'm fat. Whatever. I mean, the point is that, there's going to be irreconcilable differences, but so what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Very good.
I think that marriage is the most, it's one relationship where, it says that Adam and Eve were both naked and in the garden. And so I think in marriage, you are truly completely exposed. You cannot hide from your spouse.
No.
You're with them too much.
Yeah.
A friend, you have moments where you're with them, maybe with them a lot, but you can always retreat back to your solitary space, and you don't have to deal with all their issues, or there's yours. But in marriage, you're in such a tight bond, and it's such a reflection of our relationship with the Lord, is that we're constantly learning, and we're constantly needing to grow and to mature, grow in areas of forgiveness and compassion and service, and laying down your life for the other person, becoming Jesus to that other person, even at your expense and sacrifice. It's a beautiful thing when you start seeing it work that way. But it's challenging, because you are really who you are with that person, and they see you as you really are.
Yeah.
And instead of saying, I don't like these things about you, as a spouse, you want to say, Lord, how can I help? How can I help? Without nagging, without being that, oppressive, finger-pointing, accusational person. Lord, how can I help this person?
good.
How can they help me?
Almost like you're saying, like, you would leave your spouse to marry someone else almost because you want a different person, but you're saying you can help each other become that different person.
that's right.
And the beauty is, as time goes and you've come through those challenges, you can look back on your life and see how you have learned so much and grown so much and matured so much in even the understanding of God's love. God's love is revealed in your marriage.
Yeah.
And what is God's love like? It is a love that is sacrificial. It's a love that is other-centric. And if God is the happiest entity in all the universe, and he is the God who comes and lays his life down, then we as his image bearers need to have that same sort of mindset. That if I truly want happiness, rather than making it all about me, I need to be more others focused, thinking, how can I do this? How can I lay my life down? How can I be a giving, selfless person?
And so that seems like, because earlier on in the conversation, you mentioned how thankful you are for your husband and his, how he
speaks into my life.
Speaks into your life. But then seeing when you were young and you were so stubborn, headstrong, and strong, because you're still very you're well-spoken, you have an opinion, you are strong, but there's also the kindness and the humility that you're talking about. How has that looked like changing over time, where you're strong and you want your opinion heard and you want and I would imagine hard to receive correction, because I know that's how I am and have been and have grown in. But what does that transition and transformation look like for you?
Oh, dear me. Painful at times, honestly.
Yeah.
In James it talks about looking into the perfect law of liberty, looking into God's word, looking into the reflection of what God's word is showing you about yourself isn't always something you want to see or even receive.
Totally.
And like I said, in marriage, you are truly the most exposed, most vulnerable in any relationship you will ever have on earth.
Yeah.
And it's God's tools in changing us and transforming us, and Peter also talks about fiery trials, that we as human beings, he wants to mold us and shape us into the image of his son. And sometimes to do that, the greatest tools are a crucible. It's applying heat, and that's painful. But what he promises that as we go through that, as we look into that law of liberty and really see ourselves for who we are and come to repentance and try to abandon those things that we know are wrong or bad behavior, that he will bring us forth as gold. He doesn't put us in a furnace to burn us up and destroy us. He brings us, puts us in that crucible to purify us and make us more like himself and shine even brighter for Jesus. So, I just have to remind myself of that. And I don't think we're ever going to be finished with that difficult process, Jennie. I don't feel like, I've arrived. I certainly haven't arrived. I'm facing it today. I'm facing it, just being willing to repent, being willing to say I'm sorry, and I have a lot to learn, lots and lots to learn still.
That's so beautiful, because we're all on the journey that we're in, and I just love it. That gives us so much hope for the future. It's a little discouraging to hear, I'm still learning, but it's also such a beautiful thing. It's we're always going to be learning. We're always going to be growing. But even just what you said about God doesn't bring us into the fire to burn us up. I think that's a huge word for people who are going through a major
Tough
thing and
right
struggle
now.
and divorce and relational issues, to know that God doesn't want to burn you up. He wants to refine you, and he wants the product to be gold. I think that's so
we just don't want to see things about ourselves that we don't want to see. We are blind to our own faults.
Yes.
In marriage, that person who loves you sees those faults, and they can see the things that you can't see in yourself. But there's a great scripture. I just love this last verse in the book of Jude. It says, "Now unto him who is able to present you faultless before the presence of his glory with exceeding joy, the honor and glory and dominion and power forever and ever." And I just thought, one day it's going to be complete.
Yes.
One day Cathe's going to be the Cathe God always wanted her to be. And, until then, we're in a process. But I just love the fact that he's going to present us faultless before the throne of his glory, which would just literally destroy us in our sinful state. But he's going to complete what he started, and he's going to do it with exceeding joy. It's like, well, here she is, and I'm going to finish the work, and it was a lot of work, but here she is. I'm presenting her anyway. No, it's like he's going to do it with exceeding joy, and to me, that brings me such comfort.
Well, God sees us for what we will become, not just what we are.
Love it.
So we see a blank canvas. He sees a finished painting. We see a lump of clay. He sees a vase or a vase, and everything in life is preparation for something else. Chuck Smith once said that to me, and I really see it now as I look back over my life. It's like, why did I go through this thing? Oh, that thing was preparing me for this other thing, and this thing now is preparing me for a thing still in my future. And sometimes life is going predictably or how we hope it will go, and then there's crisis, then there's this other problem, but wait, this doesn't fit. But there is that promise in Romans 8:28 that God is causing all things to work together for good to those that love him. But then it goes on to say, for whom he did foreknow, he also did predestine to be conformed into the image of his own dear son.
Yes.
So the promise of 8:28 and 8:29 is not everything will be good. It's all good, man. The promise is, no matter how bad it is, God can bring good despite it, but God's end game is to make us more like Jesus.
Yeah.
That's the part we miss.
Yeah.
Oh, this is bad. Make it good. He never promised to make a bad thing good. Coming back to our son, I'll never look on that as a good thing. I'll always look at that as a horrible tragedy.
Yeah.
However, has good come despite that bad? Yes.
Yeah.
Has God changed me and maybe opened my heart up in areas that wouldn't have been opened up in? Yes. Did I have a boldness and a courage and a willingness to take risks after that I maybe would not have taken before? Again, yes.
Yeah.
So I can thank God for that. But at the same time, God is getting us ready for heaven, because Jesus says, I go to prepare a place for you.
Yes.
Heaven is a prepared place for prepared people.
Yeah.
Wow.
So good. Well, thanks for sharing all that.
Yeah.
You guys, one thing that's fun about you guys is, I know for us young married couples looking at you guys and be like, Cathe, your sense of style in the home, your heart of hospitality.
Yes.
Greg, your fun love of the little rat fink things, your little quirky love of the Disneyland icons and little, things like, but you guys are very normal people and have fun things that give you life outside of just studying the Bible.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You guys you love good restaurants and going out to eat. What's been giving you guys life and joy in this new season, or maybe any new little hobbies or anything like that?
Good question. Well, I would say, for me, always, it seems grandkids. Grandkids, when I'm with my grandkids, it puts my head in a different space, sort of. And what I do with them is I say, what do you guys want to do? Because they're always like, do your homework, do this, do that. Okay, I say we go get ice cream and I'll buy you a toy. Because that's my role. Being a grandparent is different than a parent.
Yes.
The parent needs to be parental. They need to do the things a parent does. But grandparenting is the reward of what we had to put up with as parents. And it's the punishment upon our children for the misery they brought us. Right?
That's funny.
So, but
I love it.
But I don't just give them ice cream and give them toys. I try to engage in their lives. I try to go to all their little swim meets and dance recitals and tennis matches. I try to be there so they'll remember me. Because, I'm busy. I have a lot of things to do. But when a grandchild need comes up, or obviously my son, I make time for those things, because I don't want to be the absentee preacher in the name of ministry.
Missing out on
my first ministry is, next to walking with God, it's to my family.
Yeah.
So I really try to prioritize that. So that's fun for me. But ministry is not my job. It's my calling, and it's Cathe's calling, and it's our passion, and it's interwoven in our life and everything we do. And there's really nowhere I can go where I will not be engaged in ministry.
Yeah.
If I go to the restaurant and have a nice meal, I'm going to run into somebody that wants to talk or whatever. That's okay. That's what I'm called to do. And I like that. But I try to find moments of fun when I can, and not take myself too seriously, and just look for those moments. I ride my motorcycle occasionally. That clears your head only because you have to be 100% focused on not being killed by someone. Because now with cell phones,
super important.
Riding motorcycles is worse than ever, because people are just randomly get out of their lane. So you're like, your head's on a swivel and you're looking at everything. But the cool thing is, when I'm riding, I'm not distracted by any issues. I'm like, just kind of in
die.
a space
Don't
like
die.
I'm moving.
Oh, goodness.
You know,
How about you, Cathe? What's giving you life these days?
You know what, Levi, speaking of getting to this age, grandchildren are always fun, and
they do slumber parties at y'all's house, right?
Oh my gosh, and watching them develop as unique individuals and their talents and their special gifting and personality is amazing. I have one who's a really great student, one who's an amazing artist, one who loves to dance. They're all so unique. But it's getting older is hard on your body. I'm sensing that physically. And so just noticing what I'm capable of doing, like once upon a time, as a triathlete, did a lot of
You're hardcore. I've done long road bikes with you. You are hardcore.
Climbing mountains in France and that sort of thing. Those
as
days
Clint Eastwood once said, a man needs to know his limitations.
And a woman too. And that is where I'm at right now. I suffered a really bad bike crash, as you know. So for me, I will say I read an amazing book. I think books and learning, you should never tire of learning.
Amen.
Never tire.
What's the book that you read?
I read a book called The Great Good Thing by an author named Andrew Klavan, and very interesting guy.
Wow.
Is a conversion out from being a secular Jew, atheist, into Christianity. He's a quite celebrated mystery writer. His books have been made into movies, and his story was absolutely fascinating. So,
The Great Good Thing.
Yeah. And I listened to a podcast called...
He's got a podcast?
He has an amazing podcast, but I found him on a...
Someone
my
else's.
gosh, it's the Great Books Podcast is what it's called. The
Great
Great Books
Podcast.
Podcast.
Ooh, I'm gonna have to write these
and
down.
so when you don't have time to read all the great books, but you want to know what are the great books that I should know
Does he
about.
give like a consolidated account of them?
On the Great Books Podcast, they
Wow.
do. Yeah. So everything from Frankenstein to Jane Eyre to whatever.
Okay, you've just given us a good tip. The
Yes.
Great Good
So
Books
never stop
Podcast.
learning. I think that's kind of my new thing in this stage in
good.
life.
The Great
So good.
Good
Great-
Thing
Great
and the
Books-
Great Books Podcast.
Yeah.
Two
The
separate
Great Good
things.
Thing is a book. It's on
Okay.
Audible and on Kindle. And the fascinating story and the Great Books Podcast. If you're interested in literature but don't have the time to read all
There's
of
a
it,
Cathe Laurie pro tip right there. Have you
Yes.
listened to any of those? The
I
Great
make them
Books
listen
Podcast?
to some of them.
No, I watch cartoons with
With the grandchildren.
Rat Fink is
See
still
how
on
we
TV.
balance
Yeah.
each other out?
I do want to say
Oh
that
my gosh.
on
I
our way here,
overhear her listening to the podcast.
Do you like it?
you get little bits
No,
and pieces.
sure I do. Yeah, absolutely.
Sure I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can read too.
I can read. I even write books, Levi.
I don't just sit there crisscross applesauce all the time.
Yeah.
But I will say though, what the reason
Crisscross
it is a compliment.
applesauce.
It is a great compliment that, I mean, as a kid, I loved your teaching. Jesus taught in a way that kids wanted to hear him. I think that being boring doesn't mean you're being spiritual. You know what I mean? I think there should be a sense of storytelling.
means you're being lazy.
You're a master storyteller. You really are.
Yes. And you guys are great, like such good grandparents, but you're also such good friends and people in our kids' life. So on the way here, Clover was like, "Oh, I can't wait for Pastor Greg to call me Clovey."
You just call her Clovey. It's hilarious.
That's
Yeah.
right.
But you guys are like your storytelling. They love you guys. But
And we're always you're always in true to form. You're always like, all right, kids up, we're going to get a little toy. And you always buy them some little toy. My kids just love being around you. Livy has her whole life loved you guys.
Yeah.
And we feel like, you guys are extended family.
Can I just say one thing about the two of you? That summer when Christopher went to be with the Lord, that was like, we were in such a state of trauma. I was like literally gasping for air spiritually. All I could do was just almost live in this realm where Jesus was. I was like almost worthless. And what I hadn't seen, you saw in conversations with Jonathan, Levi, that summer when my heart was just so grieving over my loss, you said, Jonathan wants to quit his job and he wants to help you, Greg. I was like, that was like the best good news I had ever heard, because we knew Jonathan was struggling. 1 foot in the world, 1 foot kind of quasi coming to church, being the good kid at church, but we knew he was doing stuff he shouldn't be doing. And Christopher had been working with him, trying to have those conversations
And you were
with
good
him.
friends with Christopher
Christopher and Jonathan.
and Jonathan, and you kind of stepped in and almost assumed an older brother role with Jonathan.
Well, it was so special how the handoff kind of happened because Christopher and I went to breakfast not long before he went to be with Jesus. I was out preaching for you. You were off somewhere, and Christopher and I met at the mission for breakfast. Yeah. And of course, after he doused his breakfast in Tabasco sauce because he loved his spicy food, yes. He was talking to me about how he felt like he didn't have moral authority to call Jonathan out on some of the backsliding because of his own personal prodigal son
faith. He had struggled too.
And I just said, look, first of all, that makes you more qualified than anybody because he was at a place where he was walking with Jesus, had just gotten baptized, had just rededicated his life. And I was like, don't give up that. That means more coming from anybody. But he expressed the gratitude of you being in Jonathan's life. And he, and then of course, when he went home, I took that as a great sense of assignment from him to continue on in his honor in that way.
I don't know that if you've told me that, I'd forgotten that. That's really amazing. And I think he'd be so happy. I mean, we don't know what our loved ones know in heaven. They probably know more than we think they know.
Yeah.
I don't know that they're looking through a portal watching everything, but there is an awareness in heaven of things that are happening on earth. I could make a biblical case for that, and you could too. But, certainly the Bible says there's joy in heaven over one sinner that comes to repentance. So that means there's a lot of rejoicing in heaven, and it means that heaven, there's a reaction in heaven to an earthly event.
Yes.
And so, maybe Christopher even knows that, but just to know that you stepped in and helped Jonathan, and now Jonathan's in ministry. He's a pastor at our church. He's gone beyond just following Jesus. He's now serving the Lord. He's leading people to Christ. He's taking it all very seriously. And so, this is the greatest joy that we can have. We wish Christopher and Lenya were sitting here with us today, but we know they're a part of our future, not just a part of our past.
Yes.
And so and when you first lose a child, it's so hard to even talk about them. Yeah. But now, I find for us now, I can talk about them and it doesn't bring pain to me. And I can find joy in old memories. Like when you see him dousing his food with hot sauce, I laugh, and, it's not as painful as it was earlier. And so it's, we have a voice to people who've lost children. Whenever I address this subject, people just come out of the woodwork. Thank you for saying something. And I feel like I speak to these people and I speak for these people. Yeah. I never wanted to be in their club, but I'm in their club, and I'm in. Yeah. So I'm in. I didn't choose it, but here we are. We're all in this together. Sure. Yeah. And I feel like I can speak to them, and I speak from my own life and pain, not as a man with all the answers, but as a man who learns from the Lord and things I've been able to glean from it, but then for them. Telling people who have not lost children, hey, let me explain these people to you and how to talk to them, what to say and what not to say to them.
So helpful.
And so, we're a unique tribe.
Well, and it's so weird too, like, like you were saying, I remember sitting with you guys at the beach when you guys were just days in a group. Yeah. I mean, we had you had asked me to speak at Christopher's service, and
it was amazing. What you said at that service was like,
but what's so trippy was that sitting with you, watching you guys grieve, watching you go through it, seeing you guys reading the Daily Light and taking a little verse and hiding it just to get through that day, seeing you break down crying, and then having, of course, no idea that we would be that you would then be walking us through it, and that you'd be speaking at Lenya's service.
I'll
and
never forget.
You encouraged, by God's grace, we got to encourage you somewhat, having no idea that the role was going to be, in the other way. So, I mean, it's a beautiful friendship, and we're very grateful for you guys.
Yeah. We're grateful for you
and
too.
Knit together in pain and in our love for heaven. And,
Amen.
And now, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, what's so beautiful about that is like, we've literally had the privilege and joy of watching, like we literally have gotten to watch you two, like interact with each other, be married, love your kids, love your grandkids, walk through grief, walk through joy, walk through pain, walk through horrible things, I just feel so honored and privileged that we would get to have friendship with you, but just to get to watch you guys live your lives with such integrity and kindness and fun and weird jokes, but awesome and hilarious.
Making fun of each other, in a good way. Yeah.
It's just truly such an honor.
We feel this. I mean, we feel the same way watching what God has done. I mean, Levi, when we both wanted you on staff before you came to Montana, we were like, that is the guy. We could see God's hand of anointing and power in your gifting. And he had plans far beyond being on staff with us and what he's done in your life.
We were torn because it would have been the honor of a lifetime to work with you and be around you. And we're grateful for that you'd still.
Well, the job is still open.
All right, this is my announcement.
No, because when we moved to Montana, we were like, we're leaving people behind. Like, people even told us, are there even any people in Montana? What are you guys doing? What? And it just, as we were going, we were like, I think we're saying goodbye to like friendships, because we're going to a place where everyone's going to forget about us. But it was just so amazing.
Do they even have running water there?
But then
you were pioneers.
How God brought friends, and then even just their relationship with you guys, but just people who like were able to be in our lives and speak in our lives.
It's been amazing to watch
so
God taking you as a church planner and a very gifted youth pastor, and then the platform and the scope of your ministry and your voice to the nation and to the world. It's been like phenomenal.
I seek Levi out for advice now. You know, so it's like, oh, I'm older, I should know. No, I can learn from younger men, and Levi always has great insights into things. I run things by him all the time. You're on our board at Harvest, but it's just great to. I feel like when you're younger, you should listen to older voices. But when you're older, you need to listen to younger voices.
That's a good word.
And I think sometimes we think, well, now I'm old,
answers.
I don't need to ask questions anymore. No, there's always a lot to learn. And so I think we have to help each other through life.
Before we close this out, I do want to, point everyone's attention to your newest book, Greg. This is Lennon, Dylan, Alice, and Jesus. I'm looking, of course, to this camera here. Those of you watching, you can't see that on the back is a photo of you listening. Can't see that there's a photo of you with Alice Cooper in his top hat.
It's awesome.
That's the most outrageous photograph I've ever seen on the back of a book, ever.
Isn't that wild?
It is wild. It's hard to believe it's not Photoshopped. That's not Photoshopped?
It's wild.
No, it's real.
Yeah.
It's real.
Talk for a minute about this book, because John Lennon, obviously, we know of through the Beatles, Dylan, and then, I mean, this is outrageous.
Yeah, this isn't just about these guys. I had to call it something. I had to put someone on the cover. It's really the history of rock music from its origins to the present day. So I talk about Kanye West, Justin Bieber, Kendrick Lamar, more current artists, that have made professions of faith. And I talk about how Christian music came about. But it's a spiritual biography of rock and roll. So it's
Did you get Chance the Rapper in here?
Yeah, I talked about him
because when the praises go up, power comes down.
Yeah. So and so I'm basically talking about how God impacted a lot of these people's lives, and there's also some cautionary tales. There's one chapter called the 27 Club. I almost called the book the 27 Club,
and that's Joplin.
Well, it's people who died at the age of 27: Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix,
Cobain,
Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse.
All 27 years old.
Yeah, Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones, Jim Morrison of the Doors. So, it's a cautionary tale in as far as people think fame is going to fill the void in their life. And
that's the trajectory you were on with drugs, like you were saying, right?
And these, what's interesting and why we need to know what the spiritual journey of these people is because they are the philosophers of today. These are the people who are informing and inspiring and leading a generation. Whatever they're singing about, they're going to know that more than they're going to know the Bible, probably.
And there's surprises in the book. In the story of John Lennon, there's some surprises. People don't know about John and his spiritual journey and how he did make a profession of faith at one point. Same with Dylan and others that I talk about. So there's some twists and turns. And sometimes I describe a person as a work in progress. It's like it's not done yet. Pray for them. We're so quick to judge in the church. Judge.
Or cancel, right?
Right. I had some people like on social media, opine and say, these people sold their souls to the devil. Excuse me. Number one, you can't sell your soul to the devil. Your soul belongs to God. Number two, no matter what life you've lived, God will forgive you if you repent of your sin. Think of the thief on the cross. probably the murderer on the cross,
Don't
a
write
criminal.
anybody off.
Yeah,
Or
so,
Paul the Apostle.
yeah.
Paul the
holding
Apostle.
Stephen's, the jackets of Stephen's murder, right? Yeah.
So I write with compassion. I don't write in a condemning, dismissive way. I look at these people with compassion. Many of them had very troubled childhoods. This is one of the reasons they developed their artistry as a mechanism to cope. And so they become these very successful people, and they climb to the top and find out there's nothing there. So I'm using it as a metaphor. It's almost like a modern retelling of the book of Ecclesiastes in some ways. Like,
Wow.
you know, Solomon had he was the rock star of his day. He had global fame. He had immeasurable wealth. He had all these things, power as a king. And you know, he walked away from God and then repented and came back with the Lord, wrote the book of Ecclesiastes and basically said, it's all emptiness. It's like the bubble that bursts. Here's what I found. Fear God, do what his commandments tell you to do. That's my takeaway truth. So, you know, I'm using these modern Solomons and, you know, to tell their stories. So it's a good book. It'll encourage Christians and to be reminded of the fact that no one is beyond the reach of God.
Good.
And number two, it'd be a great tool to give to a non-believer
Yeah.
after you're done with it. They
All
might
right.
read this book.
That's
Amazing.
Lennon, Dylan, Alice, and Jesus by Greg Laurie with Marshall Terrell. Is there a book website?
Well, basically, you can order it directly from us at Harvest Ministries, and we'll give it to you for your gift of any size. You can order it at Amazon.com in hardcover, and it's also in audio and the Kindle format.
Very cool. Well, thanks for
Amazing.
and it joins in a series of books you've done on this
Yeah,
vein.
I never planned on being a biographer, but it started with my book on McQueen, Steve McQueen, The Salvation of an American Icon. Then I wrote Johnny Cash, The Redemption of an American Icon, and that's being made into a documentary film right now.
Wow.
And should come out sometime this year. Then I wrote Billy Graham, The Man I Knew, and this is my newest. I have a couple of ideas percolating for other books, but I kind
I
of feel
think
like
you should write about Walt Disney. I think that would be
he
fascinating.
Was amazing. He's one of my, all-time
See, there you go.
favorite people.
Walt Disney. Okay, the sermon's done. It's time for a sandwich.
Yes.
Thanks for being on the podcast, guys. Love you guys. Love you so much.
Too. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for listening. And be sure to swing by levilusko.com to see what's going on in our world, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. In the meantime, we would love to connect with you on social media. Jennie and Levi Lusko, out.